Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another podcast for Northern Heresy. I am joined with Kyle, and we will be talking about Inductii, or at least Kyle will be educating me about Inductii, because they're the new thing, and they're cool, apparently. So,
Yeah. So for everybody that because we're talking about Inductii today, Inductii came out in the Siege of Cthonia book for Age of Darkness. It introduces a whole heap of options for each of the legions, to show off these Inductii squads. Now,
so
first edition had Inductii for just the World Leaders.
yeah, but that was mainly from a character that they had access to.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think those updates and those characters and the inducti and things like that come in.
I
Oh,
think
what
they're
what book was it? Was it book six, book seven?
yeah,
The
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were very late being introduced into 30K version one, and only the world leaders could gain access to it. You had to take, I think it was the name was Galen Serlac
Yeah, he was an
from the
apothecary.
Yeah, he was the mental one who actually approved all of the butcher's nails and stuff, right?
Yes, I believe so. I just
Yeah.
remember
So
that World Eater armies from that point on basically just. I think the standard thing at that time was like you had 20 of them in a Spartan, because they were pretty nuts. So I'm
yeah,
pretty.
I always heard about world leader players just running inducti squads, taking Galen, just running loads of inducti squads with chain axes just at you. I think they must have got something special. I actually don't know an awful lot about
I think they
first
were.
edition inducti.
I think they were pretty much well augmented. So they were. I think they were a lot stronger and they had a lot more attacks than normal um, troops that the
Yeah,
World
but
Eaters had access to. As far
Yeah,
as I
but
was aware.
likely, as we'll see, likely had a drawback to taking them as such. So,
I don't think there was, and that's probably why you've seen so much. But anyway, that was first edition.
but
So
anyway, so that was first edition. Siege of Cthonia came out a few months back. So not a year in, and we got our first additional what they're calling the campaigns of the Dark Ages or Age of Darkness,
okay,
which is I think how they're going to continue running. Because heresy lasted for many many years before being reinvented as the Age of Darkness.
it did.
And considering that the tomes that we have for collecting whatever Legion, Mechanicum, once they're out, I think they're wanting to follow that mentality of that's the book and that's what you'll be using for many years. We're going to tack on a book onto that, and I think that the Siege of Cthonia book has done some things well and some things poorly, and there's some absentee things for what's in the book.
Well,
But
you've got the book, so
I do,
like before
I do.
we jump into the Inductii, what is your overall views of it? Like what, like because this is the first campaign book that we've got.
Yeah,
How
I
does it
think they
compare to the old black books?
it doesn't really compare to the old black books. I mean,
Okay.
this breaks down into you get a campaign setting which you can follow.
Yes.
So if you have those Sons of Horus and Imperial Fist and you want to play that story, you can. That's a very small element of it.
Okay.
I think the bigger takeaways from what this book has is Inducti get a large portion of the book actually devoted to them.
Yeah.
Um, the Zone Mortalis rules, which is why I got this book, are in here.
Yes.
Um,
I did watch another podcast YouTube channel, Heresy Hammer, and they have a segment looking at just the Zone Mortalis. It's something that we're going to do in the very near future is look at the Zone Mortalis rules ourselves. But from what I got from that is I like the reinforcement system that they've got, and I'll be playing my first game of Heresy, coming back to it, and Zone Mortalis on Thursday.
Zone Mortalis plays very differently, and I look forward to hearing some of your feedback from it.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm bringing
But
many flamers and a librarian.
So you said about how did this compare to an old black book? Well, there's nearly 130 pages dedicated to like fluff,
Well, that's good.
which I think is really good. I mean they're going into that classic explanation of the battle. They're showing it from multiple perspectives. You get some really great images of like the battleground and what happened and various different lore bits and pieces. Even if you're not an Imperial Fist or a Sons of Horus fan, it's great to see that sort of breakdown.
Have you read the story?
I have, yes.
I read it last night, and I thought it was very, very good.
Yeah, I mean it's got two opposing sides which I have no vested interest in, but I thought it was a great depiction and actually brought those characters that then are now available as HQs a little bit of life to them, and it actually goes a whole long way. Instead of just bringing out a named characters, it's like, well, what have they fought in? Is like, don't just give us no names, actually talk about them, because they're both brand new characters, aren't they?
They are, yes, they are.
Yeah, like they haven't been talked about in books or whatever else, so this is their introduction to that. I think it's going to be good, because if this is what they're going to do for the likes of this, which is obviously Imperial Fists and Sons of Horus, I'd like to see future campaign books do the same thing for other battles. It doesn't matter when it's set during the Heresy, as they've shown with their little timeline. So they can go back and forth and, fit things into places and have these really interesting, like, mini campaign books.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really taken away from the story is Wordbearers are dicks. And I really like the fact that the Terminator Elite from the Raven Guard, the guys that fought with the Sons of Horus and modelled themselves on the Justaerin, used the Sons of Horus tactics and way of warfare against the Sons of Horus. And I thought that was really cool. And the ending I found hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. I'm not going to, for anyone who hasn't read it, I'm not going to spoil.
Let's not spoil the story for anybody who is interested. But
it's let's just say that a certain legion turns up and they give zero fucks about what's going on. Absolute zero fucks. And it's really quite entertaining. But yes, word bearers are dickheads. Absolute dickheads.
So they truly are. They once again prove that they are the source of the conflict in the Horus Heresy, even near the end where the Siege of Terra happened.
But one thing that and a lot of people have talked about this, and I have seen this online as well, where people have said about that it feels like a campaign that is pointless. Now,
oh, totally,
it is and it isn't. But from a strategic point of view, Chthonia is extremely close to Terra. It's one of the reasons why Horus was found first. So, from Rogel Dawn's strategic point, he has to kind of do something about it, because essentially he has a traitor stronghold almost on his doorstep. And there's a lot about the story that is kind of quite in depth. But the fact that it does actually last for a good 7 years, like, so the length of the Horus Heresy itself, the actual
18 years. Actually, hang on, I've got the timetable in front of me.
Pretty sure the Horus Heresy was only 7 years, unless they've retconned that and extended it.
Let me just tell you, because they have an entire timeline.
I was flicking through that in my rule book, and that's why I wanted to know about Inductii, because they are mentioned in the rule book.
The Horus Heresy lasted a total of 9 years.
Oh, okay, so they've extended it slightly. It used to be 7.
So from the point of view of the Chthonian storyline, in 05 M31, the Horus Heresy began,
Right.
and then the in 1431 you have the fall of Terra, as they describe it in this book. The traitor War Master Horus crushes all resistance in the Sol system and prepares for the final assault on Terra itself. Chthonian is now totally alone with no hope of salvation from without.
So 9 years.
So 9 years is the span of the heresy.
Yeah. So they've extended it
The
slightly.
first siege of Chthonian happened 1 year in to the heresy.
Is it? Have they marked it
And
down that
then,
it happens before or after Esteban 3?
so Esteban III is what kicks off the Horus Heresy. The
Yes.
drop site massacre is a year later,
Yeah, but
as is the first siege of Chthonian.
right. So it's obviously after Gyro gets out and gets the word to Dawn. Then, okay. Well, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Then you have the Ruin Storm happens 2 years after the beginning of the heresy.
That's going to be a good campaign book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Then you've got the Solar War happened 5 years after the beginning.
hmm
Um,
I mean, there's a lot of them that they can do.
there's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a big 2-page thing that they have here in various points. And the second siege of Chthonian happened in 1331. So,
I'm hoping that at some stage they cover Esteban 5 and give the 3 Loyalist Legions a little bit of love before we get ignored for the rest of the setting. I just want a named character that's not Vulcan. Just one. Just one.
So they have various bits of fluff in this whole thing. They have a lot of different artwork of the various legions in this book. It's like I've seen some Dark Angel pictures. I've seen some Sisters of Silence, some jet bikes, some lovely top-down 2D images of the different Mark 6 paint schemes. Really cool. Really cool. But we're going to be talking mainly about Inductii today.
So what are they and why should I care?
Why? Why is a very important question.
Yes. What are they and why should we give a shit?
So, Inductii, from a fluff perspective, is your troops that aren't as well trained. They've been flash indoctrinated to bolster numbers. Happened in the late eras of the war because they needed to, between I think Horus's Dark Imperium, or Dark Empire that he had built up, he was just harvesting as many people as he could. The traitor side used an awful lot more of them from a classic lore perspective, but the way this book represents it is that all legions did it. To a certain degree, it's true.
Okay.
So they've fleshed them out, and they've told us is like they're telling us that they're referred to as the Shunned. There's an entire page on why following the events of Esteban 5, there's so many reasons why you shouldn't like these warriors that haven't earned their armor or the name that they're following, right?
Okay.
So they're referring to them as a generation apart. So there's a lot of different things that they're talking about. It's like all these different methods to make more men. And Imperial Fists did this a lot. I think they were actually one of the highest producers of Marines come the end of the war because of the bolstering of the walls.
Right.
So they're being depicted as they're not as good, but there's loads of them, which I think fits them down to a T. So the way that Inductii, so going from that into like a rule perspective,
Okay.
every legion has access to them, and they follow what they're calling the Inductii templates. So the way that the template works is that depending on what legion you are, depends on whether you gain a Inductii squad of tactical marines or despoilers.
Right.
It only affects those two troop units.
Oh, right.
And
Interesting.
yeah, so it affects them in different ways as well. I'll give you you'll see as we go through this. But the way that the format and the template works is that you've got your legion at the top. It'll tell you which unit applies to you, whether it be tactical or the spoiler. It'll sometimes give you a unit composition, so how many you have to have, if there's any changes and the like. Same for the character profiles, because there's some of these Inductii unit change profile statistics.
Okay.
It gives you your unique subtype of Inductii.
Right.
It tells you about war gear that you have access to or maybe don't have access to anymore. And then sometimes, depending on what legion you are, depends on what your special rule will be, but it'll remove something to give it to you, showing that they're not that excellent to get something for free.
So you still get your legion rule then with these?
So you still get your legion rules, yep.
Right.
So the Inductii unit type is, and this applies to every model in the unit.
Yeah.
So a unit that includes any Inductii cannot be joined by other models or have models assigned to them. So
Right.
you can't have independent characters join into them, and
Really?
more importantly, you can't attach the likes of an apothecary or a tech marine to them.
Okay. It's a bit shit, but
Yeah, so it shows they are standalone. They can receive very little support from outside characters.
right.
So to further this, no Inductii model can be equipped with artificer armor.
Interesting.
And an Inductii unit gains the support squad special. So you can't have them as your mandatory troop.
I imagine as we progress through the heresy that will change.
It could do. It could do.
I would imagine that we'll see an Inductii rite of war at some point that makes Inductii troop.
It would be cool, but considering that the way that I would describe these as there's enough because all these units remain line units, which is really important.
Right.
So that means that they're still able to score. It just means that they can't have anybody with them. So they're a great third or fourth troop choice.
Yeah, so you're not going to build
your line later on in like bigger games.
You're not going to build a Death Star out of them.
No, I mean the way that I build mine is it's 15 guys that cost me 175 points. They're literally throwaway, but they can hold down something if I need them to.
Yeah.
And depending on which legion you are, depends on how that you'll use them. They're just, I think that they work in quirky ways, and they can really make they can surprise you for how good they are, for how cheap they are.
Right.
So that is all we have for the template. Going on from that, we just have our different legion specific stuff.
Okay. So which legion do you want to start with first?
I want to start with the Alpha Legion first.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
I think that the Alpha Legion Inductii are insane.
Okay.
I honestly think that they are so good, and I really, really wish one of our Alpha Legion players would try it, just to see how it works.
We only have one Alpha Legion player.
Do we?
Yeah, I think we've only got JG. He's the only one that I know of.
I don't know about that. They're always sneaky, them ones.
Oh, well, you could be an Alpha Legion player.
I could be, but I'm not.
I'm definitely not. Not enough flames.
So the Alpha Legion get a tactical squad as their Inductii.
Right.
They replaced Heart of the Legion with Treacherous Lure as their special rule. And it's great because side by side, so the is a picture of a Alpha Legion Inductii with armor that looks very much like its Thousand Sons.
Okay.
And the way that this is, a unit entirely made of models with a special rule may not be selected as a target of shooting attacks in the first game turn.
Ooh.
Right?
Right.
So if it may suffer hits or wounds, otherwise it's no effect. So you just cannot shoot them in the first turn of a game. That, I think, is hilarious, because that means that if you want to do like a full deep strike army or something really, really silly, these guys can just be all over the table, especially considering Alpha Legion like to infiltrate, they like to scout. You can have these guys everywhere, and your opponent can't do anything to do with them, because you just can't interact with them in the first turn.
That's nuts.
Yeah, yeah. Now they can still, it can still be the target of a interceptor reaction, and it it needs to have blast scattering onto them for it to actually work. But yeah, the Alpha Legion, I think, got really, really strong, a strong choice for Inductii.
It looks it.
So, so they're all one of my favorites.
Okay.
But I think we should talk about the classics, the World Eaters. So the World Eaters use a Despoiler Squad as their template,
Yes.
and they replace Heart of the Legion with Ravening Madmen, which is it's one of the rules in their Legion that they can take.
Right.
A lot of so it's the old rule of I think it's the same thing that what Angron has, is that you can always hit him on a 3+.
Yeah.
But I think you're one harder to wound.
Right.
So that's what these guys get. It's pretty basic. It's I think the best way to use them is to be throwing them at things that would normally be hitting you on 3s, because then they're just going to get you're just using them to tar pit enemy forces rather than trying to win fights. Because these guys, they're assault marines, they're tactical marines, whatever you want to call them. They're a standard marine loadout. They aren't going to be there to win all of your fights.
Do the World Eaters still get access to chain axes?
They do, for free.
Ooh, that's nice. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it is. Now, Ultramarines. So Ultramarines use a tactical squad, and for every 5 models in that tactical squad, you can give them a flamer, a plasma gun, or a melta gun. So it's very reminiscent of that 40k, the 40k tactical squad.
Right.
And that is what they have. Instead of Fury of the Legion, they get Inexorable, which is like pseudo stubborn. So, yeah, it's that sort of Gilliman's first look at the tactical squad to try and make it.
Right. Okay.
Let's see, where are the salamanders?
I have the salamanders here.
There are the salamanders. Is there any you've like to look up?
I quite like the look of mine. Obviously, so much so that I have arms incoming for a 10-man Inductii squad that I will be building next month. I like the fact that they are a despoiler squad, that they're led by a veteran, and that they have a weapon skill of characteristic of 5 for the sergeant in the squad.
Yeah,
because obviously
really nice.
He's a Legion veteran.
Yep.
And all models in this unit comprised of the Salamander Inductii gain the Inductii subtemplate, which is obvious. And then for every 10 models in a unit modified by the Salamander's Inductii template, one despoiler may exchange their chainsword for the following: a Dragon Breath Flamer, which is pretty good, or a Meltagun.
Having a cheeky Meltagun every 1 in 10, ain't bad.
Yeah, 15 points for the Meltagun. So like a 10-man squad, as far as I'm aware, you can only make these up to be like, what, 15?
20.
20. So, yeah, a 20-man squad, 2 Meltaguns.
That's worth it.
Now, they have like the special rules. So all models in the Inductii replace the Spite of the Legion special rule with the War Gear of Heroes special rule, and this is kind of cool. So basically, because my Legioners is kind of nice, we're kind of nice guys, the Salamanders, and we realize that these kids are literally kids in power armor, but they are the next generation of heroes. So to represent that, we give them cool stuff to play with.
So the Salamanders were one of the legions which actually geared their recruits correctly.
And how that works rules wise is basically they always get reroll all failed to hit rolls of 1 for attacks in melee.
That's nice.
So that's pretty cool. It's kind of funny that, but they don't get access to anything. It's only a despoiler squad. So
yeah, but it's real cheap though. That's the point. Like you don't want to be giving these guys too many upgrades, because you can't have like artificer armor, but you can take everything else. So the likes of Vexilla.
My argument would be my guys are led by a veteran sergeant, so he should have access to artificer armor.
But because he's leading the Inductii, still not worth 2 saves.
No, he's a disgraced veteran sergeant.
he's a little bit. He might have had an old injury, but he still knows how to flap chops.
He's on his way out to retirement. But yeah, I kind of like the idea of them, and obviously I've got the arms incoming, so I'm gonna.
What sort of size of squad are you thinking about?
I'm just gonna build a 10-man squad for starters.
Just 10 man for starters. Always a good start with a 10 man.
I will probably not bother with the Flamer or the Meltagun, to be fair.
That's fair.
Because the sergeant will still gain access to a hand flamer. So
yep.
I can give him a hand flamer like I'm going to be giving most of my sergeants.
Ooh. So here's the thing though. So can your despoiler sergeant take a combi melta?
I don't know, unless I actually go into the other room and get my book and actually look at the spoiler squads. But Dragon Breath weapons don't change combi weapons.
That is a shame.
Yeah, it's basically it's not.
Although
I'm pretty sure they don't.
As a slight segue, there is a what do you even call them?
There is
unit of renown which get combi Dragon Breath Flamers. Which I think
they
is
do.
Really...
Yeah, I've seen them before in one of the PDFs, and they're basically 30k Stern Guard, but with combi flamers. Yeah, I did look at them and go, ooh, tempted.
Yeah,
but yes.
Oh, for modeling, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Who doesn't like a combi flamer? But
Dragon Breath combi flamers.
Dragon Breath combi, extra spicy.
Good luck charging that unit if there's 10 of them. That's 10d6 automatic hits.
So, moving on from the Salamanders, we have... I actually really like the Thousand Suns Inductii, which don't really make sense. Because the majority of the Thousand Suns were... They got sucked off into the warp after Prospero, right?
Yeah, but
Most of them did.
they still see the whole thing with the Thousand Sons, and we'll get into this when we actually cover the Legion. But they are very weird in how things go for them after Prospero.
Is there much in terms of novelizations? What happens after Prospero?
Yeah,
A,
they're
a full
kind of
scene?
yeah, they kind of Prospero, not Prospero, but A Thousand Sons kind of covers it. They kind of get pulled into the warp to get away, and they go to the planet of sorcerers and like reforge the planet there. So they spend a little bit in a time in the Eye of Terror at the beginning.
But they're
Um,
not rubric Marines until after
no,
the
no,
siege,
no.
right?
I think this is what starts sort of triggering the mutations, which
Okay.
is what Araman and the rest of the Cabal try to stop. But they are present on Terra during the siege, and they do their thing there. But they're still Marines. They're not walking suits of dust at that point. But yeah, so they kind of are operating like the other legions, but they're not. And there's not. It's very hard to work out what they were doing and how
Now
they were doing it,
there is mention of a loyalist Thousand Sons element in the book.
which is quite
And
interesting because that's a little bit of a retcon from Inferno.
so the way that they've done that is that this group is under the lead of Captain, but they're being babysat by the Sisters of Silence, and
Yeah,
they've
yeah, I read that.
changed,
That's kind of like to keep an eye on them to make sure that they are 100% pure.
but also to differentiate from regular Thousand Sons, they've changed their
Symbol back to
Legion
their
emblem
old
um,
symbol, yeah.
back to one with a big M on
Yeah.
it.
Um, it's because like in first edition in the Inferno book for book 7, um, it mentions how once the word comes out that they're to be exterminated, obviously Horus manipulates the Emperor's orders and then passes it to the other legions, and there's little snippets of like uh, the a large contingent of them, Thousand Sons, fighting alongside the Ultramarines, and the Ultramarines just turn their guns on them, and it's like an Order 66 in 30k. The other
Hmm.
legions that are near them just start exterminating them. So it's kind of cool that there is some of them that have survived that, and
Yeah.
obviously have made their way to loyalist hands and surrendered basically. So that's kind of cool, and I'm hoping that that is represented a little bit more in when it comes to the rules for the Thousand Sons. Um, that we get a little bit of love for the loyalists, Thousand Sons, because not all of them were traitor.
Hmm.
So,
We may need to also wait for a future campaign book if that were to ever be a thing.
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm still intrigued to find out whether the traitor salamanders are, according to the warlord traits, because there is none, law
I
wise.
think to me is like how can a salamander turning traitor is literally one of them which doesn't agree with Vulcan.
Yeah, but
That's as traitor as they can possibly get
yeah.
because they can't ascend to proper traitor legion status.
Now, there's rumors that there have been traitors in the past. It's where like the Dragon Warrior Chaos Space Marines come from, essentially. But they fell after the chapters were formed. But
Yeah,
no salamander fought against. No salamander went into the drop site massacre, got out of the drop site massacre, and then went, you know what, fuck the Emperor, I'm going on Horus's side. After what happened to
yeah.
them, it's
Like
like,
Black Shields and the Shattered Legion forces, the ones which were just acting on their own. That's the level of traitor that we're talking about, right?
yeah, Yeah. I think that's what it's trying to make it out. But according to the warlord trait in the it's traitor, and they've sided with Horus. That's literally the fluff of it, and it's like, mm, I understand from a game's point of view that it's there so I can take all of the you know the war crimes units like my rad weapons and phosphorex and stuff, and that's kind of a sort of holdover from first edition where we were just flat out told this legion doesn't use that stuff, so you're not allowed to use it, um, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's it's a little bit it's weird. I just want to see if they're going to expand on that, because you get some legions like the Imperial Fist that just do not have an option for trader at all. Like I don't even think you guys, the Space Wolves, have got options for trader Space Wolf.
No, no. However, they are mentioned in Russ's rules that if somebody does take Traitor Space Wolves and he's on the table and he does his howl,
Yeah.
they immediately either have to be pinned or they take a pinning check. I think it's something like that.
Interesting.
Which I think is cool, because that means it's like they know fine rightly they've done they're working against Russ.
They fucked up.
Yeah.
It was at this point they knew they'd fucked up. But yeah.
But anyway, back to Thousand Suns. So Thousand Suns Inductii lose Fury of the Legion, but
Right.
they get unattuned practitioners, sort of showing that they're not part of the Prospering Arcana. They're not part of a was it the Corvidae and Raptora? They're not one of them. They get their own little rule because they're not trained in it, which I think is really cool. So this psychic check, so they do a psychic check, and then you can resolve shooting. All resolve shooting has breaching 6 up.
Right.
However, if you fail the check and you get a Perils of the Warp, you receive an additional wound for that Perils of the Warp.
Okay. It's a bit nasty.
And that's what they get. I think it's really cool. It makes them really lethal if you get it off. You're not getting a reduction in your leadership, so you're working off of 8 with the sergeant there.
Yeah.
It's not unobtainable, and it's pretty cool as like a third tactical marine choice for an army. And that's what you're going to see, is that because these are support units, these are there to bolster your men on the tabletop, so that you're not diverting so much points into them while they're still there and able to do a job.
Yeah.
They've got a thing to help them support themselves almost.
They're an interesting concept.
Yeah. So going on to that, let's talk about the other side of the coin of the Ultramarines template is the Imperial Fist template. So they also use a tactical squad.
I imagine these are going to be pretty bad because they're Imperial Fists.
Oh, sure. So 1 in 10 models is able to buy a heavy bolter or an autocannon. So pretty good with the Imperial Fists always shooting better with like bolt and auto weapons. It's really good. They lose Heart of the Legion but gain supporting fire, so they keep Fury, which is really good for them. But they lose the feel no pain whenever they're near an objective. So they get supporting fire, and that is once per battle. They can make a shooting attack, and if heavy weapons in the squad gain pinning, in addition to other weapon effects they might have.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a pretty tasty little squad, but because they're heavy weapons, that means that they're going to be standing pretty still instead of moving around like tactical men. But that once per game, trying to pin people with some heavy bolters or autocannon fire, yeah, that's great.
And they'll benefit from the +1 to hit for being Imperial Fist with bolt weapons.
No, well, yeah.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Hmm.
That's disgusting.
Speaking of disgusting, I think we need to talk about Night Lords.
I've heard about this. I've heard
So,
about these guys. These sound so fun.
so Night Lords get a Despoiler Squad inducti.
Yes. Shocked.
The Despoiler Sergeant has his leadership reduced to 7,
Right.
so he's the same as everybody else for
Okay.
the leadership characteristic.
It's probably worrying for his back.
The war gear. So they replaced all their chain swords with killer blades, which sounds very Night Lords, right?
Does.
Everything's killer or stabby or
Terror.
Nostromo or terror. Or, yeah, the yeah, the fear blade.
Yeah. True emo legion.
So these are strength of user, AP
Right.
nothing, melee, but breaching 6.
Ooh.
So getting that AP, getting fishing for those 6s, whenever you're wounding people, there's a lot of attacks are going to come out of these despoilers. Night Lords stuff, if they're outnumbering you, they gain more.
They do.
They still have Spite of the Legion, but they lose Heart of the Legion and get Unscrupulous Murderers as their special rule.
This rule is so good. It is so good.
So it's a little bit wordy on the page, so I'm just going to try and break it down.
Go on then.
So whenever you're involved in the challenge with your sergeant, at initiative step 10, you can select 2 other models from your squad.
Yes.
On a roll of, so you roll a d6 for each of them. On a 2+, that gets those extra guys get the stab into the challenge. Right? However, if you roll a 1, they try and stab the sergeant. If either of the model involved in the challenge is destroyed by these attacks, the challenge is no longer considered to be ongoing, and you can fight normally at your relevant feats.
Now, that is kind of cool, but there's also a little really cool thing that you could maybe put 2 power axes into that squad.
Yeah, for every 5, you could have a power weapon. Oh, sorry, that can't apply because you don't have a chainsword to replace.
What do you mean?
You get, because you've replaced all of your chainswords with killer blades, you can't swap a chainsword to be a power weapon. If you get what I mean.
I suppose that's one way of getting around it then.
Yeah,
because I was thinking
they're all stuck with the killer blades.
Yeah, because I was thinking if that was the case, you could give 2 guys 2 power axes and they're hitting at initiative 10.
Yeah.
But they've got Shanky McShanky knives, which is kind of cool. And if you roll 1, they shank their boss. That is so good.
Just don't roll 6.
Yep, 30k needs. In fact, 40k needs more rules like that. It's so thematic.
So fun.
Chris,
so if I was doing Night Lords, I'd be running these guys.
Yeah, we know Chris listens. My arch nemesis. You need a squad of these.
He does already have at least one.
Yes. Inductii fight, shank on shank. How funny it would be if 2 Night Lord players fought each other, and they both.
Oh, it would just be knives everywhere.
There's like an extra 4 guys jumping in, stabbing the crap out of each other.
So, the next Blood Angels. Blood Angels are interesting.
Okay.
So they use a Despoiler Squad, which is pretty normal for a Blood Angels player. They use an awful lot of assault squads. These guys just don't have packs. Right?
Okay.
So they remove Spite of the Legion with the Revenant Legion. And the Revenant Legion is a unit that includes models with models like this may not make sweeping advances. In addition, if a unit that includes any models with a special rule wins combat and all enemy units fall back or are entirely removed as casualties, then all models in this unit gain Fear 1 until the end of the battle. Thoughts?
So what? So they stay. So after they fought combat, they stay still because they're essentially eating their enemy.
Yeah.
And then they cause fear.
Yeah.
For how long?
Until the end of the battle.
But they have to stay still after. What?
You can't sweeping advance.
Yeah.
If you're locked in combat and you win combat, you gain Fear 1.
That's pretty shit.
As long as the enemy that you fight either is wiped out or they are falling back, you then gain Fear 1.
That's pretty bad. Like, fear's good in regards to, manipulating people's morale checks within, I think, is it, 12 inches or something like that?
Yeah, it's something really big.
But the fact that they can't sweeping in advance to run the unit down that they've just beat.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's thematic.
It is, if you want to represent something like the Flesh Tearers' 5th Company.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's not great.
It's not the best. It's not Night Lords.
The Night Lords, to be fair, isn't amazing. It's just extremely thematic and fun.
It's just fun.
And it's the kind of thing that when you roll your dice and roll a couple of ones, the pair of you will just piss yourself laughing that poor sergeant is just literally being shanked.
And I think that's the thing, is like some of these units you can definitely see is like there was a little bit of fun in the atmosphere whenever they were designing some of the Inductii. But then other ones just are a little bit dull.
I can see what they're trying to do with the Blood Angels. It's like they're basically succumbing to the red thirst and they're going down
that's exactly. Yeah, it's because the fluff part of the Revenant Legion says often stopping mid-battle to tear slain foes apart to consume their flesh. So it's a very Blood Angel thing whenever they don't have control of their urges.
I think what would have been nicer is after they've wiped a unit out, they gain Furious Charge 1. If
they gained Rage or Furious Charge, that would have been nice.
Yeah, to represent that whole.
Yeah, it's like even if it were to be the first time you would do a sweeping advance, you can't, and then you gain that and you can sweeping advance again.
Yeah,
it's like lock them down in the rules until they do the thing, then give them the reward of being able to do it again.
Yeah, they kind of remind me that they kind of should get more savage the more they kill and eat, because they're really losing the plot and going into that bloodlust.
It'd be really cool if this wasn't just locked into Fear 1, and if you did it multiple times, it got scarier and scarier.
Eventually, just caused terror.
Just Fear 4.
Yeah.
No one else has Fear 4.
But then that they could do the same with Rage or Furious Charge as well. That the more units that they beat in combat and consume, the more lost in the bloodlust they get, and the more crazed they become. And you could even give them the rule that after they've done it once, that they have to charge the closest enemy models. They don't have a say in it. You have to go, because they're just completely uncontrollable. But that would be thematic and cool and kind of...
Yeah, but also you don't want your Inductii to be then better than your regular guys.
True, but you limit them by doing what they do a lot. With yours, you guys can't get like a sergeant.
Yeah.
So you do some things like that where you limit them in what they can do, and there's just essentially 15 to 20 guys running around with close combat weapons. They're not scary in regards to, they're not going to run up to an elite unit and absolutely steamroll them. But
Well, as we're talking about them, let's jump into the Space Wolf because there's not much else we can say about the Blood Angels.
they're a bit
Both sort of they're a bit
pants.
bland.
They're a bit pants.
So the Space Wolves, as you said, they replace the Sergeant with another Legionary
Mm-hmm.
in the squad. You get a lot of war gear options with the Space Wolf Inductor. So you can replace your bolt pistols with combat shields for no cost.
Okay.
And you can also you can replace the chain swords with chain axes for 1 point per model.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. Keeps in theme with a lot of the Space Wolf range. It will look really, really good. Space Wolf rules, they replace Heart of the Legion, which is our Feel No Pain,
Mm-hmm.
and they gain Headstrong, which is when declaring a charge with this unit, you can choose to make it headstrong. If you do, you add 2 to the result of the charge, but it is disordered.
Okay.
You can't go above 12 inches as standard, but they get a free +2 to their charge range, but their charge is disordered whenever they do it.
+2 to their charge is quite nice.
Yeah. So the way that I've actually thought about these guys, because I personally think that combat shields are a trap.
Really? Why? What does the combat shield give you?
So combat shield gives you a 6-up invulnerable save.
Okay.
However, a combat shield also doesn't restrict you on how many attacks you get with for having a bolt pistol and close combat weapon.
Right.
But you're replacing your bolt pistols to get the 6-up invulnerable.
Okay.
So that means that if you decide to do disorder charge, you get a whopping 1 attack per model.
Oh yeah, because you're losing the pistol for the shield.
Because you're losing a pistol for a shield, and because you're disordered, that's 1 attack each.
Oh wow. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I personally have kitted them all out with bolt pistols and chain axes.
So you don't have to take the shields if you don't want to.
You don't have to. It's entirely optional. It's nice that it's free, but because these guys can't have a Feel No Pain, they can't have an apothecary with them. I'm using these guys just as cannon fodder. They're still as fast as other Space Wolves, so they're still going to be moving their 7, running their initiative, and then charging.
Okay.
Because that's what Space Wolves do. And getting that extra 2 inches in the charge, I don't care if I'm not getting the charge bonus with bolt pistols and chain axes, because I'm still getting 2 attacks base on everything. And because they keep Spite of the Legion, if they're pinned or don't have a character and I charge them in, then I get a +1 attack bonus back. So, yeah, there's a few different ways to use them.
Interesting.
I've not even bothered with any power weapons in the squad. They're just 15 blokes with chain axes. I've bought a Vexilla for them.
I think mine will probably. I might give my sergeant a power weapon, or maybe a lightning claw or something.
I don't know, Thunderhammer and a weapon skill 5 sergeant. Even with 2-ups, I mean, if you're going into a challenge, most of it's AP2 anyway.
Oh yeah,
so
he's dead.
But and it has happened an awful lot. Either no hits are done because you're harder to hit in that challenge, or they're failing to wound because they've only got 1 hit through, they've rolled a 1 again, and then you smack them over the head with your Thunderhammer, and that teaches them.
I do have a few Thunderhammers now, just sitting here. But yeah.
That or a Power Fist.
I'm a big fan of Power Fist, as you've noticed with my build pictures. All my sergeants have power fists.
I wouldn't consider myself someone who would say Thunderhammer's on everything,
No.
but there's certain units which they definitely work on.
This is the one thing that I get a little bit irritated about when it comes to 30k and 40k, especially for Space Marines. And that this is the preconception that because of the theme and the fluff of a certain chapter / legion, that is what they predominantly use. So, as an example, salamanders, we like making shit and like hammers and flamers and burn things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that for my support squads I'm going to bring nothing but flamers. You know, there are other weapons that have the burn theme in it, like melters, Volkite. And just because we like to make and tinker doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to run around with a Thunderhammer. Yes, Thunderhammers are cool, but they are Space Marines at the end of the day. And it's the whole thing with White Scars only ever use bikes. A good portion of the Legion did, but not all of the Legion. And not all of the World Eaters were crazed close combat berserkers. As we know from other books, there were heavy weapon squads.
There was librarians.
Well,
you can't deny.
Up until a point there was, and then Angron killed them all because they were annoying as head. But yes, I'm probably going to be the one of the few people in our gaming group that is running a librarian, and it's funny.
I certainly don't.
It's funny listening and reading the WhatsApp group where you get people instantly mention, but you can't run that because of the Council on Nicaea, and it's like if the game didn't allow me to take it, then they wouldn't give me the option.
It's strangely the Imperial Fist players who are so against it.
Yes, and they're allowed to use them, and it's like, yeah, but I'm not using what magic. I'm using Earth Shamanism with a sprinkle of fire. But yeah, I just hate this. Like, legions had hundreds of thousands of men, and that they had different formations to tackle pretty much everything the galaxy had to throw at them. And it's just this thing that, you know, your legion is this, therefore you have to play like this. It's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I can build into my legion's rules, but build it around how I think. It's like my Predators. I haven't put the Flame Torrent turrets on because I don't want a Dragon Breath turret. But I have put the Melter turrets on because still feels salamandery and it's a lot better than the Flamer. So, but yeah, it's I just don't, that whole thing of that, I don't like that at all. Maybe that should be a different podcast where we discuss what irritates Rick about wargaming communities. There's a lot.
We'd be here for days.
People using loaded dice and throwing them in toilets. Very annoying.
So, back to the Inductii. We have the Raven Guard, which I think got a really nice touch.
Good, because it's nice to see the Estevan 5 loyalists getting some love.
Yeah, and I think that is really the big takeaway as one of the Estevan 5 loyalists. Any of you that are going to look at these are going to see, oh, we've actually got some love in this. It's like Salamander's got a really cool one. The Iron Hand, which we'll cover soon, got a really nice one.
Well, out of all of the legions, the three Estevan 5 survivors should be using a lot of Inductii.
Yeah. So the way that comes across from the Raven Guard is they use a tactical squad, which we've talked a lot about the spoilers for a while. We're back to tactical squads.
Ooh.
So these guys lose Heart of the Legion, but gain Unchained Conviction.
Right.
There's no other changes for these guys in terms of what they can have in their tactical squad. They just have the regular Inductii limitations.
Okay.
So Unchained Conviction is a unit composed entirely of models with the rule that fails a pinning check is not pinned. Instead, it moves 7 inches away from the enemy that caused the pinning test. If this would bring it into contact with the edge of the table, don't move any further. Once all models in the unit have been moved, there's no further effects and the unit is not pinned. If it is required to make a move during a charge, then the charge automatically fails. If the unit is required to make this move during a charge, then the charge automatically fails and the unit is displaced from its position when the charge was declared. I think that's amazing.
That's very good.
Not being able to be pinned, falling back, it's very thematic with what Raven Guard want to do already.
Yeah.
It's almost like a mini version of their once per game reaction.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. Really good. And it goes well with their Legion rules, where they're going to get the infiltrate in that first turn. They're going to get their, is it 6-up Shrouded?
Yeah, they will, yeah.
Yeah, so they're a really, really cool unit.
Ooh, I just realised that the Salamander and Inductii are quite spicy when you give them a reaction.
Yeah, and that's a sort of unit that you'd want to use in that reaction.
Because they get +1 weapon skill and +1 strength. That's a weapon skill 6 sergeant. Sorry, that just popped into my head. I was oh my god, these are actually quite good.
You're just teasing yourself, Myra.
I can't wait till I need more tactical marines so I can build them.
So, more tactical marines as we're up is the Death Guard.
Right.
So, the Death Guard got tactical squads again.
Okay.
1 in 5, or sorry, for every 5 models in the unit, you can replace one of their bolters with an Alchem Flamer, which is their special poisony flamers.
Okay.
And you lose Heart of the Legion and gain Barbaran Resilience. So when Barbaran Resilience is a little bit weird and very wordy on the page. So when a model with the special roll suffers an unsafe wound, it can make a Barbaran Resilience roll to avoid suffering the wound. It may not be rolled for instant death, so it's very much like your feel no pain, right?
Right.
It's one of those mitigation saves.
Ooh.
They could have narrowed that down and shortened that a little bit, but that's what they said about it. But
Okay.
it's feel no pain. So you roll a d6. If this, what you're required to save changes depending on how many models are in the unit, is how this breaks down. Right. So if the unit has 10 models in it, you don't get a roll.
Okay.
If you have less than 10, then you get a 6-up. And then if you have less than 5 models, then you get a 5-up.
Right.
Treat any discounted wounds as having been saved. On any result, the wound is taken. On any other result, the wound is taken as well. It is a mitigation roll, and any model may only make a single mitigation roll of any type for any given wound. So it's a feel no pain, which instead of getting your Heart of the Legion, which would just give you a feel no pain on your objective, they are relying on one that gets better over time, depending on how many you've lost.
Right.
It's a bit but it's there.
Okay.
But having those Alchem Flamers, I think, is worth it for this unit. Because what Death Guard player doesn't like splashing in Alchem?
Yeah, that's very true. They definitely like their toxins, to our old Deathy boys.
Yes, indeed.
Do we have a Death Guard player?
I believe so. I don't think he's attended very much, but I do believe we have at least one Death Guard player.
Right.
I believe he's having a little bit of a torment because obviously Death Guard can move and shoot as if they are relentless, and he's worrying about how many heavy support squads he should bring and what they should be armed with.
Right. Okay.
So, Iron Hands also use a tactical squad.
Okay.
Another one of our Estevan 5 survivors. So, I'll love to hear your opinion on what your thoughts on this squad is. So, tactical squad, war gear options. The Legion tactical, the Sergeant may take a singular Phosphex bomb for 10 points.
Okay.
You replace Fury of the Legion with Forbidden Augmentations.
Forbidden Augmentations.
So at the start of the controlling player's turn, as the active player, before your movement phase, you roll a dice for each unit that includes this special roll.
Okay.
On the roll of 5 up, all models in the unit gain +1 weapon skill and ballistic skill until the end of the turn. However, on the roll of a 1 or a 2, the unit suffers D3 wounds with an AP value of 0, allocated to the unit as per normal. I really like these guys. Every single turn, you roll to see if if they become ballistic skill 5 tactical marines.
Okay.
Randomly, Phosphex bomb, but what are your thoughts?
So go through that again. What do they get?
So they lose Fury of the Legion, so they can't double tap their bolters.
Right.
Instead, they gain Forbidden Augmentations, and once per turn, you roll a dice on a 5 up. So on a 5 or a 6, you get +1 ballistic skill and weapon skill.
Okay.
However, if you roll a 1 or a 2, you suffer D3 wounds, but you get saves against them.
Right. It's interesting.
I think it's nifty. Having the random Phosphex bomb to just chuck at the enemy whenever they're close to you is always funny.
Yeah.
But being able to get to that ballistic skill 4 or ballistic skill 5 with bolters isn't to be shrugged at, and making them weapon skill 5 could actually see them as a lethal prospect in close combat.
Yeah. No, it does sound. Yeah.
I think the whole point of them is they after Ferrus Manus has died, the Iron Hands decided to break into the vaults that he didn't want them using with all the weird technology, and they decided to replace bits of themselves with the vault tech, which they shouldn't have touched.
Yeah. Poor Iron Hands. Poor Iron Hands. Feel sorry for them.
I think of all of them, the Iron Hands make themselves very unlovable. It's hard to like Iron Hands.
I imagine that they've all got Asperger's.
I mean, it would have been a very different thing if Ferrus Manus could have actually fixed the problem with their genetics. But alas, that never happened.
Well, they kind of believe flesh is weak, and their dad kind of walked around with
Was it
molten
not
metal
because
hands.
the world that they were on was radioactive? It was pretty much like proto-Necrons almost.
Kind of, yeah. He put his hand in liquid metal, which essentially was a Necron, or some form of Satan. So, and that fused to his hands.
Yeah.
It's like, really, I don't know why we didn't just purge them there and then. Messing around with Xenotech. Let's get rid of you.
So next we'll move on to the Sons of Horus. So Sons of Horus got a spoiler squad.
And we're going to have a stab in the dark that these are pretty spicy.
So they're another spoiler squad which can buy chain axes for 1 point each.
Well, at least they have to pay for it.
Yeah, so you're still better off as a World Eater player where you get yours for free.
Well, you should get them for free.
Well, that's part of their Legion rules, so yes, that is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
But for these squads, they're giving them access to chain axes, much the same way that the Space Wolves did.
Okay.
They lose Spite of the Legion, but gain Creed of Brutality.
Ooh.
So, spicy name for something which is at the start of each assault phase.
Mm-hmm.
If a unit that includes at least one model with the special rule, it has basically, if it's within 6 inches of a character. What? If this models with a special rule within 6 inches of a friendly model with the Legion of Astartes Sons of Horus special rule that has a weapon skill characteristic of 5 or more, all models in the unit with this special rule gain Rampage 1 and Furious Charge 1 until the end of that phase.
Rampage 1, Furious Charge 1?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Rampage, so if they're outnumbered, they're going to get +1 attack. And on the charge, they're going to be +1 strength.
Mm-hmm.
And all you need to do to get that is put them beside an elite unit, so the likes of your Reavers or just Darren, or even having a character like a Centurion of something nearby would get that to trigger every time you charge. That's really cool.
Yeah, that
because
really is.
That feels like they're edged on by the fact that there's more elite troops nearby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty spicy.
And again, I would just keep them nice, cheap. Just give them all chain axes and a Vixil.
Yeah, you want to, but you'll run them alongside the Reavers or even the Justarian.
Yeah.
That's
something nearby, and that's all you need. Just needs to be real close.
Yeah, that's really nice, actually.
Yeah. The Word Bearers also got a spoiler squad. So they lose Heart of the Legion and gain Empty Vessels and Traitor special rules. So you can only take them if you're a Traitor Word Bearer player. I don't know how many of those exist.
Only traders? I would imagine.
Only traders.
I don't even think that Legion should have access to Loyalist, because they were all purged the night they decided to switch.
So, Empty Vessels is at the end of each game turn, controlling player of a unit with the special rolls a d6 for each such unit that does not have the corrupted unit type.
Right, okay.
Add 1 to the result if any enemy units were destroyed as a result of an attack or a sweeping advance that turn. And add 1 to the result if the enemy warlord has been destroyed during the battle. So on a 5-up, which is the normal, that unit suffers D3 wounds, which you can still save against.
Yeah.
But then gains the corrupted subtype and Furious Charge 1. I like that.
Yeah, it's baking nicely into their Legion rules for the corruption.
Yeah, I like seeing units grow during a game. It's something that you don't you very rarely see, where a unit changes or it gains buffs for the rest of the game because it had to complete some sort of, it's like the evolution of a unit during a game, which is really cool. It's better done than the Blood Angel. Because you're still rolling for it, but if you get some bonuses if other things have been dying around you. It just fuels the chaos, right?
Yeah, that's it's pretty cool. It's definitely builds into it. So can you give them corrupted for 25 points?
No, I'm not too sure you would want to, because they get a roll on this and it's just a free thing where they then gain corrupted and furious charge 1.
Yeah.
I think you don't want to corrupt these guys. You want them to get corrupted during the game.
Ooh. Yeah. Interesting.
Which I think is really cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Definitely thematic.
Yeah, it's like you're mini possessed almost. It's like they're getting possessed in the game rather than already being Galvorback.
Yeah.
I like it.
Me too.
So we're on to our final 4, I think.
Ooh.
Yes, we are. So we've got 3 traitors to talk about and 1 almost loyalist. So we'll talk about the Emperor's Children.
Okay.
So Emperor's Children, so they got into Spoiler Squad.
Right.
They may exchange their chainswords for charnable weapons. That's what they got as their war gear upgrade. They get charnable weapons for 5 points each.
Yeah, then that's a trap.
You think it's a trap?
Yeah. That's 5 points is a lot of points for a model for all of them. And those blades are not that great.
But I think that there's at least 1 charnable weapon which has breaching on it, which is what you would go for. Especially with Emperor's Children that...
Yeah, but is it not just the normal version that they can buy? They can't buy any of the special ones?
I believe charnable weapons are covered by a multitude of different types, just like the power weapon category. They also replace Heart of the Legion with Perfection Embodied.
Right.
So all models with this rule have Leadership 10 when resolving morale checks in the shooting phase or pinning tests. If a unit with this special rule is part of a combat that results in a draw, then a side that includes 1 or more models with this special rule count as if have lost the combat by 1. So if it's a draw, you lose. If both sides include models with a special rule, the combat remains a draw.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, not bad. Interesting. I think the weapon options is a trap for doing the whole unit. Maybe like 1 or 2, maybe, yeah, but the full unit, that becomes pricey quite quickly.
Yeah, I agree. It depends on how many points you want to spend on them.
Yeah.
But the fact they can all have charnable weapons, and I do believe that there's at least 1 version which gives you, it's either breaching 5 up or 6 up, much like those murderers' knives that the Night Lords get. I think that this could be, it can hit above its weight class because of the things that it can do already. As an Emperor's Children to Spoiler Squad. Because it's still going to be faster than you whenever it charges. You're still going to be able to try and get those hits in before you even have a retaliatory strike against you. It could. I do think that it can hit. It can certainly hit above other Inductii squads and regular tactical marines.
Yeah.
Just because it's Emperor's Children.
But, well,
and because of the war gear stuff that they get access to.
Yeah, it's going to anyway, because they're going to get the initiative bonuses because of the Legion rules.
They're going to have their Sonic Trigger.
Potentially,
They're going to have power weapons in there. They're going to have their always, whenever they charge, they're going to be higher initiative already.
Mm.
I think it's a solid unit.
Yeah, I think there's definitely better ones out there though.
I think it's a shining example of some of the best.
Yeah.
However, let's look at some of the worst in the opinions of a lot. The Iron Warriors.
Really? No way.
Oh well, let's have a read through, and then you can give me your opinion. So they get a tactical squad.
I'm sad now.
They replace Heart of the Legion with Souls of Iron.
Right.
So Souls of Iron. During the controlling player's shooting phase, a unit with this special rule must attempt a shooting attack if there's an enemy unit within range, and must target the closest enemy unit possible that is within line of sight, and is a valid target for shooting attacks. You must always be shooting. If 2 or more targets are equally close, you choose. In addition, this unit automatically passes pinning tests it's required to take. That is the Iron Warriors.
Say that again.
So, they lose Heart of the Legion.
Yeah.
Instead, they must always shoot a target that is within range.
Right.
And they must shoot the closest target within range.
Okay.
If it's equal, you choose. And they automatically pass pinning test.
And they're just tacticals.
Yes. So you can give them the shrapnel bolters, which are Iron Warriors only bolters. But yeah,
not they're it's not bad. I mean, once you give, can you give them the shrapnel bolters?
I believe so, because they are Iron Warriors. They can.
So they'll get, yeah. Sure. That's not bad.
But
I mean,
then
and they can't
it makes you
be
shorter
pinned.
range. Can't be pinned is the big takeaway.
Yeah.
Automatically passing pinning tests is really, really good.
Yes.
But I think the Iron Warriors fall into the problem that they already do so much for the tactical squad that this doesn't really help them.
True, but I definitely think there's play there.
Yeah. I think the thing to also to be mentioned about the Inductii is that, remember, Zone Mortalis is a thing. Some of these units work an awful lot better in Zone Mortalis than they will in a regular Age of Darkness game.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's a different reactions. There's different ways to play, and I think that some of these squads feel a lot better whenever you get them into confined quarters.
Ooh. Just found a tier list online.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Trying to decipher what they all are. I think I've worked out what most of them are. There's one of them that I'm not too sure what they are.
So we've got 2 left. So let's talk about the Dark Angels.
Right.
So the Dark Angels is kind of small and just very, very basic. So they got a tactical squad.
Okay.
What else happens here? So they get a tactical squad. They lose the Hexagrammaton unit from being a Dark Angel, so they cannot select a wing to be part of. You get what I mean?
Yeah. They lose their crazy.
Yeah, so you can't make them Fire Wing or Death Wing or Dread Wing. They're just Dark Angels, and that's it.
Well, that makes sense.
They're not trusted enough to be part of the wings. That's how you gotta look at these guys.
Oh, poor Inductii.
So these guys must exchange their bolters for Volkite chargers at no cost.
Okay.
And they lose the Fury of the Legion special rule. And that's what they are.
Is that it?
That is it. They all get Volkite chargers. They can't be part of the hexagrammaton,
Okay.
and they lose Fury of the Legion, but you've given them all Volkite chargers, so that doesn't matter. So yeah, you've made a line support unit with Volkite chargers for a very cheap amount of points.
Hmm.
So I mean, on paper, they're really bland, but I can see a lot of work from them just from that third or fourth troop choice. Instead of taking a support squad, you take these guys because these guys will just they'll do the same job for cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad. They're not great. But yeah, I can kind of see what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, there's nothing spicy about them. They're just raw recruits and they've been given Volkite.
This tier list is actually quite interesting.
And last but not least, the White Scars. So the White Scars got a spoiler squad.
Yes.
It makes specific mention in the war gear that the Legion Despoiler Sergeant cannot have their power weapon upgraded to a power glaive.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the power glaive is I
It's
think it's a white
their
scar.
it's their
It's a white
specific.
scar unique thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So he cannot have one of them.
Okay.
Special rule: they replace Heart of the Legion with Proof of Valor.
Right.
Now this is a really cool rule, and it's so surprising to see. But let me read through it, and then you can sort of pick it apart. So, when a model with this special rule suffers unsaved wound during a fight, while locked in combat with at least one enemy unit whose majority weapon skill 5 or more, you can make a Proof of Valor roll to avoid suffering the wound. Roll a d6 each time, so you get a 5 up mitigation against suffering wounds. If one or more wounds is discounted due to the special rule, and the unit that benefited from the special rule has not been entirely removed as casualties or forced to fall back, then at the end of the fight subphase, that unit is said to have proved their valor. At the end of the battle, if any units from the player's army prove their valor, a player scores 1 additional victory point.
Right.
So, you need to throw them at something which is weapon skill 5 or more. You need to not die.
Okay.
Not fall back. And have somebody who has survived taking one of their saves to prove your valor and gain 1 additional victory point.
Problem with that is if you're throwing into something that's weapon skill 5, you're generally throwing it
Yep.
into an elite unit.
Yep.
Which means you're going to get rinsed. So, yeah.
I mean, getting a 5 up feel no pain against that and potentially surviving.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's trying to do a thing, and I think it's really cool that it's trying to do a thing.
Yeah, but I don't think the thing is very good.
I mean, it's very funny if a White Scar player just turns around. It's like it does. It's like this unit is. I mean, you're talking about trash level for the Marines of the era, and if one of these units pulls that off and he just screams out about how he proved his worth, that's very White Scar.
Yeah.
It's like, I survived. After all odds, I survived. But yeah, so that's the Inductii templates, Rick. We've got through them all.
Mm. There's some pretty good ones. I'm kind of glad
What
that.
what what are your top three thoughts
Um, I,
from us reading through?
I like. I, there's some there that really sound quite fun to play. Um, Night Lords, really really cool. Imperial Fist, Sons of Horus, pretty solid.
Mhm.
Um, if you could get your head around how Raven Guard work, there's a really good. There is
Yeah.
some absolute twonk ones though.
Well, okay. What's maybe it's hard to discern a top whenever we're talking about Inductii.
Yeah,
What's your worst out of them?
I would say the Blood Angels, the Death Guard, and I don't really rate the White Scars that much. It's I think the reason why the White Scars is it's yes, it's cool and thematic, but the likelihood that if you go into something with Weapon Skill 5, that's normally indicated of an elite legion specific unit,
Yes.
which
Yes.
means they are
Because
going to be tooled up to the dick and they're going to shred you. Now I know that if your unit survives, you get that buff, but
no. So the way that Proof of Valor work, they need to target those weapon skill 5 units in order to get the save.
they're a despoiler squad, so they have to target in combat,
Yep. Yep.
and
That's
they're
exactly right.
and they're going to get murdered. Absolutely murdered. Like, yeah, okay, if you've got a unit of 20 of them, you might get out with half the unit, and then they've got a really cool save. But they're going to get murdered. So yeah, it just doesn't. It just doesn't feel
Yeah, well,
good.
I think it's the fact that you're gaining that one victory point if you survive. Because if you fall back, you're not getting it. If you're wiped out, you're not getting it. So these guys really need the help of somebody else. Like they need to be thrown into a combat. It's like the second round of the combat, you need to have reinforcements for them, otherwise they're gonna die.
Can they have a Land Raider?
You could you could bung them into one if your army allows for it.
I mean, for a White Scars army, you'd kind of want to put these in a Spartan with 20 of them, and then
Yeah,
have them going into combat alongside your bikes.
that's a
But
lot of points to be spent on an Inductii
it
squad there.
is, but if you were going to go leaning into your White Scars and the traits anyway, you're going to be taking a lot of fast moving stuff. So bikes, jet bikes, salt marines, that kind of stuff. So again, they don't really fit. Whereas like the Salamanders for me, the Salamander Inductii squad kind of works because you're not massively penalised. You're getting reroll to hit it for ones in combat. You get a half
Yeah,
decent
because
unit leader.
I mean, to put it into perspective, as you're saying about the salamanders, I mean, salamanders one, you're getting the war gear of heroes. You're getting that
Yeah,
reroll one hit, which another unit which does that for your army is the fire drakes. I think
yeah,
they get the same sort of rule.
yeah. They have forged on Nocturne, so
Yeah, yeah. So they get it's from a different named rule, but
yeah,
it's still just giving you rerolls of one to hit, right?
yeah, definitely.
And it's really nice because it shows that sort of that quality of war gear that they're wanting to portray in the salamanders. Um, it's not heavily used, which I think it could have been, but yeah, it gives you another access because they didn't want it army wide,
Yeah,
but here's a second unit with you've given them a little bit better shinier gear.
it's fun, but like
I
I
think
said,
them being led around by a veteran, I think, is really nice about the salamanders as well.
that's just kind of like a cool thing.
Yeah, because even compared to the Space Wolves, we lose ours.
Hmm.
You guys get your ones get like an even better guy.
Yeah, I need to find a really grizzled, bearded head for my Inductii sergeant. Um, but yeah, it's I like that. But yeah, the
I
Blood Angels,
I didn't think that anybody from Nocturne had hair. I thought
they
it was
do,
just all I
and
thought it
it
was just all bald people.
no, they do have hair, and it's green.
Oh,
Any of the artwork that you see of the salamanders, they all have green hair.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, they
I
all have
thought they
it.
were all just red-eyed bald men.
No, they all have green hair. There's a very cool piece of artwork on one of the covers of the one of the Heresy novels. I think it's the Vulcan Lives. It's the one with Vulcan on the front anyway. And there's two bareheaded salamanders on either side of him, and there's another one, but he's got pure white hair and like a little white goatee. But there's like one guy's what looks like he's got like red ginger hair, and then the other guy that's got literally bright green mohawk, and it's like that's so fucking cool. That's so cool. I'm so having a bright green mohawk. So, but yeah, yeah they do have hair. But yeah, so I need a grizzled veteran with a beard so I can give him a bright green beard.
Yep,
And I,
you need to give him an eye patch and
yeah, a
just
bionic hand.
yeah.
There's not
He needs
enough
to be
bionic parts.
he needs to be leaning on that thunder hammer instead of wielding it.
It's got dual power fists, baby. If you could only use dual power fists, that would be so
Hmm.
cool. But nah, yeah, there's some really interesting ones. I think for other than not being biased with my own, I think my favorite out of all of them is the Night Lords. It's so thematic and so funny, and just nails what that Legion is about. Because you can imagine you rolling a one, and one of those Inductii are like, "I'm in charge now."
It's already happened in a game that I had against Night Lords, where the squad tried to challenge me. He failed, and he tried to stab his own guy.
Yeah,
It comes up more than you think,
that's
and
just so good.
the worry that then Chris had was, oh, I could be killing my own guy here.
Yeah,
But it's I think with all of the legions you have, while we're trying to like look at them, is like we can't always remember each of the legion's specific rules and like war gear things, and
mm.
there are bits and pieces of that in these inducti squads. And remember, you always have access to them with your certain legions,
Yeah,
so they can be modified before, even with what they have on their templates. So they can be useful in different ways if you play that legion.
yeah. I mean, like my guys are going to be obviously ignoring, well, not ignoring, but getting +1 to the dice rolls needed for Melter, Plasma, and Volkite and Flamer. So they still get that little bit of survivability off that.
Uh, just from the salamander point of view, you've got your chain swords and you're rolling forward, and once you get into combat, you're re-rolling ones and then you're re-rolling your wounds anyway because you're chain swords. It just gives you that
Yeah,
better spoiler squad.
yeah. I think that's why I'd probably maybe get one or two squads of them. I don't
Yeah,
think I'd do a
but
big massive blob. Forge World are not getting that much money out of me.
I'm surprised that you gave him it for the chain swords you've already bought.
Oh yes, had to be done. Had to be
But
done.
then I can't say anything because I do have the Space Wolf heads on my Mark 6.
You do. You do.
One squad.
Well, you've got to support Forge Worlds because you know they're kind of like no one. They're that forgotten love child that no one really wants to interact with anymore.
Well, that's the thing. Like I think I bought them more as a nah. I can definitely make these look decent. It's like it's always down to the poses and ways that you model the Marines.
Well, to be
So
fair, to be completely fair and honest, like my despoiler arms are not coming from Fort World, so at all. So for the price that I paid for 10 arms for 10 Marines, as well as my apothecary parts, still come in a lot cheaper than what it would have been if I had just went to Fort World directly for those arm sets.
yeah.
There's a very, very talented 3D sculptor and printer by the name of Beowulf Miniatures, and so I've got a couple of bits and pieces from him. And I will be doing a review video when it all arrives next week, and there'll probably be a little bit more because he showed me a few little bits and pieces that he doesn't really advertise, but that he does have. And it's really nice. But the apothecary parts are really cool because it's an arm, and I think there's a little bit of pieces for the belt to build your own apothecaries.
Cool.
So I'm going to have at least 3 apothecaries for the army.
Apothecaries are a good mainstay unit, and I think we should we'll eventually start tackling the generic units.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be hitting librarians soon, because obviously I am going to be running one.
Yeah.
And I think I'm the only one that's running one. So,
well, I don't use a librarian, but I do use a caster of runes.
It's kind of the same.
I've used it once.
It's I don't know. Like from reading the rules for them, there's a lot of. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some of the powers that are just crap, but there are one or two that have got a lot of utility, and a lot. But when we cover that episode and I go through how librarians work and how they're different from first edition and now into second edition,
we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is Inductii, not Psychers.
But we won't be. I won't be going into Thousand Suns. We'll keep them very much on their own podcast because there's a lot of information for Thousand Suns.
Yeah, they've got a fair amount, and it's good that we're going to be covering how Psychers work first, so that everybody can be up to date on how their Legion then supplements that.
Yeah, they take it to a whole other level.
It's interesting.
They are, and I was very tempted to do them, but I don't like candy coated red, so that's why I didn't do it. Very easy to paint, but I just don't like doing it. So yeah,
that's fair.
But Inductii are cool.
That's why you're with the green boys.
Yes, and there is a painting tutorial. I think by the time you've listened to this, it will be up on the channel for how I do my salamanders, because I get a lot of people asking how I get that green. So there is a painting tutorial up there, so you can head over to now and watch it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm loving it. I really can't wait to actually get playing. I'm quite excited. I've got everything.
You say your
done
first
now.
game is going to be a game of Zone Mortal?
It is, yes, against the Thousand Suns. So,
and how many points are you playing?
We don't know yet. I think I'm going to wipe my list. I think it's probably going to be about 1,000. And that's then fair. Yeah, I reckon with everything that I've got, I could probably do 2,500, maybe 3. I have the box built. And I have the 3 additional predators, and then I'll have my apothecaries and my librarian and my master of signals that I'm making. So I've probably got quite a lot of points there, and then obviously next month, and I'll have the 10 Inductii as well.
There's some interesting rules in Zone Mortalis for how you deploy your force.
The reinforcements. I think
the reinforcement points, I think, are a really nice touch for Zone Mortalis.
Yeah, just as a heads up, then what we'll do then next week was we'll cover Zone Mortalis.
We'll cover that after you've played your game against it.
Well, by the time we've come to record the episode, I would have played my game.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
we'll for next week's episode, as you're listening to this, the week after podcast, will be Zone Mortalis. Look at us planning ahead, way ahead.
Hey, look at us
But
go.
we're getting into the groove, and then we obviously will round out the Esteban 3, 5 legions and cover the Iron Hands.
Yes, yes.
Because there's, and then that'll be them. So,
Yep.
but I think that would be us. I think this is the first podcast we've had where we are well and truly under the 2 hour mark. That has to be
Woohoo.
a first. Has to be a first.
Oh, I don't think it's a first, but certainly it is a rare occurrence.
It is very rare, and we haven't had very many tangents today.
And this was just Inductii. It shows you how much we can waffle.
But it's an interesting subject. Like they're new, they're shiny.
I like them because they, it's like from the viewpoint of the book is that this war has been raging for near enough 12 years at this point.
Yeah.
It's very close to the Siege of Terra. It's the second Siege of Chthoniya in their timeline. And to talk about each of the legions in the book and why and how Inductii, I think is quite good. Is like it shows you is like this is how you can adapt them. They even make mention of the Sons of Horus, like their version of the Galvorback, and they make mention of Wolfen as well, which I think is it's rather surprising.
I do think we will see the Sons of Horus eventually get their Lupusol possessed. So eventually, and I do think the Space Wolves will get Wolfen, because they were there. They were a part of the conflict, and it'll be interesting to see. I was actually shocked that they didn't mention that much about the Wergeld with the Raven Guards cock up when they tried to experiment.
I think they actually did. I think it's only a snippet.
Yeah.
Let me see if I'm able to. Before we finish up, let me see if we can get a lower tidbit.
Because I was just flicking over the Inductii, and I didn't see anything about them in the little bit of fluff. Yeah, it's not in the fluff for the Raven Guard template.
It's a shame. I thought it was.
Yeah. But yeah, Inductii are very cool. I'm looking forward to running them. I think it's a kind of a night, and the fact that I know a couple of people maybe not really a big fan of it because it is such a radical new thing that they've added to the lore. But it is in the main rulebook. Like if you get the main rulebook, there is a little box, and it calls and it's labeled the Inductii, and it gives you a little bit of spiel about what they are. But it's kind of cool. I like that. I like that a lot. It's kind of expanding on everything else.
I think they did a good job of fleshing out that particular part because not everybody knew what Inductii were, and they've represented them well. Not every legion has been treated equally in what happens to them for Inductii, but I think that also represents how the legion or how the parent legion would have reacted to them as well.
And it kind of cool. Yeah, and it kind of sort of makes an interesting sort of comparison between the proto-Astartes in the legions compared to the modern day Space Marine. Not the Primaris, but the actual firstborn guys that we would have in 40k, because they're very much like the Inductii in regards to what they are and how they work. Whereas
there's a lot of mirrored comparisons to be had from it, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's kind of like sort of shown that, like, obviously the legions will eventually die out; they become chapters, and the legionaries from the legions die and disappear. and what we're essentially left with is Space Marines, but they're basically Inductii. They take over.
They're living
Yeah,
they're living in the shadows of stories. They don't really know the heritage, but
yeah.
they carry on regardless.
It's really kind of cool. And then again, that shows a real distinct difference between a 40k Space Marine, not Primaris, and a Chaos Space Marine, where a Chaos Space Marine, and well, in a way, it kind of answers the question of how Chaos Space Marines are still around after 10,000 years. And it's obviously that they're still themselves using the the Inductii templates to create new Marines, because they
Yeah,
can't create Marines like the Legions did before the Heresy.
yeah,
Because they
yeah,
certainly wouldn't have been able to, with regards to how much their infrastructure would have been destroyed. But so
yeah.
that's
I
really
mean,
it's a clever piece of fluff that they've put into the story, and it kind of answers a lot of questions in regards to modern day 40k.
yeah,
Um,
it's a nice nod that
yeah,
yes, you're poor quality, but you're en masse
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time. At the time, whenever they needed en masse to help with the problem.
And then 10,000 years later, you may be poor quality, but you are now the standard quality
Yeah,
of what
yeah.
everyone is. And then the Primaris Marines come along and make themselves better. I like Primaris Marines. They're pretty cool.
You like to chop them up and make praetors out of
Damn, man, I've got PTSD from that.
them.
That is I'll for it, the video's there now if anyone wants to watch it. That has got, like, I obviously do a voiceover on that, but if I actually had saved the original dialogue that you hear in the background, there is a lot of swearing when I realise that I have fucked up. Um, when I actually glue the arms and stuff on, and I realise that I should have just kept the back on those legs, it's like I have really fucked this up. Not only have I fucked up a Pareto model, which is like 25 quid, I've pretty much screwed up a Primaris character, which is like 27 quid. So all in all, this is a £50 fuck up. Um, and thankfully, I just glue everything and fill the gaps in with green stuff. But
Yeah,
and
it
it
is,
turned
it is
out,
salvageable.
yeah, it turned out a lot better than I was hoping. But now he's on my desk. He's painted. He's sat in there ready to go for next week, and he looks
And
great.
such a good job. Such a good job.
And nobody has pulled me yet for using Primaris Flamers.
Nope, because they look
Um,
the part.
yeah, they do, and they're Dragon Breath Flamers, so they're not like the normal ones. They're made by a salamander, so therefore they're better. So screw
I
you.
think the certainly for the like the would you almost call it like hero scale for like the those praetors in the box and all the characters that are coming out. It's like slightly bigger than your standard marines.
No,
They
no. I did a lot of tests with Marines stood next to him, thinking, is he going to be bigger? Um, and not really. The size scale. I think the reason why the Praetors look bigger is because their armor is slightly bulkier. Like, if you
yeah,
look at the
yeah,
chest piece, there's an actual armor plate over the top of the armor, because you can see the actual
yeah.
armor of the Mark
It,
6 inside the
it's
Gorget.
showing that
Yeah,
it's like artificial
yeah,
chest
he's
plate.
kind of bulked up, and obviously then
Yeah.
with the cloak and everything else on top of it, it just makes it look a lot bigger than he is.
Hmm.
Um, but I think
Don't
that
forget about the tactical rock as well.
the tactical rubble, yes, tactical rock. I'm just looking at Vulcan now, and it's just an entire base of rock, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of tactical rubble there. But yeah, it's really good, and I really like them, and I'm really, with the new champion that they've shown, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the
Do
traitor
you
champion
do
looks
you
like.
do you like that model?
Yes,
Because
yes, that model's beautiful.
what draws you to that model? Because I do want to know. Um,
Um, I love. In fact, I'm going to get a picture of it up now, and I'll tell you.
I know this is, it's eating into our time, but
well,
it's worth the discussion because
this is padding.
I don't really want to talk about the champion after this, but I'm curious to know
So
what is appealing about that champion.
straight away, it's Mark 6 armor, and I love Mark 6. The chest piece with the really cool ornate gorget around it is really quite good.
Is it in keeping with the other guys that came out from the Age of Darkness box with that weird file?
No, it's a lot. Well, yeah, sort of. Yeah, it is. Yeah, looking at the Praetor and looking at him, kind of. Yeah, the Praetor ones are a little bit more ornate, where this is a lot more knightly, if you could
Okay.
use that. Um, the weapon systems on it is a little bit strange, giving it a combi melter. Okay, that's a little bit strange. But again, I would imagine that if you don't want that arm on there, you're going to be able to switch that out for a general Mark 6 arm and a new studded shoulder pad if you wanted.
That's the thing. I obviously, because we can't see the back of the model at this
Well,
point.
you can. There is a picture of it.
Oh, is it? Right. Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, how molded in does that combi melter look?
Oh, I think that entire arm's one piece. I think when you look at that model, it's going to have a separate head because there's two of them. The arm holding
helmeted and unhelmeted.
Yeah, there's a helmet and unhelmeted. I will be highly surprised if that sword obviously isn't attached. So I'm probably going to go out on a limb here and go the power pack, the head, the combi melter arm, and the sword and hand are separate from the main body. And the main body will be that have.
Does he have a cape?
No, he doesn't have a cape. He has a slight tabard at front and back, incorporated into it. And I think this is why people.
If I recall, it looks like Primaris cape, doesn't it? It goes under certain parts of the armor, but over others.
Yes, but I would imagine that's because the chest piece on the body is like the Praetor's chest piece. It's on top of the actual armor plate. So you've got the armor underneath, and it's got the additional armor on the top.
It makes it look too Primaris, I think.
I don't mind it. I like that. This actually works a lot better than what you do if you look at the new Stern Guard and Blade Guard for the Primaris, where that literally does go underneath the chest armor.
I've heard nothing but praise from the Imperial Fist players about this model because it fits their theme perfectly.
I think it fits all legions by yours. I think to make this Space Wolf, you're going to have to heavily convert it.
I have actually made a champion out of the sword Praetor.
Yeah, well, that would work.
I took the massive power axe from the Space Wolf 40k Terminator box, which hand size is perfect for him.
I've seen a lot of people criticize the sword. They don't like the sword. It's a Paragon blade. It's
again, it doesn't fit my theme, so I didn't want to use it.
The heads are pretty cool. Again, I wouldn't be using
with every head.
Yeah, they're all interchangeable. One of the things that I really do like on it, and it's such a lovely touch, is the real sort of prototype nature of the reflector field on the power pack. The fact that obviously what we're seeing there is the sort of start of the now Iron Halo that we get in 40k. And that thing that you see in all Space Marine characters, like captains and stuff, with that sort of half spiked circle, semicircle, which is essentially the Iron Halo. But
I think that the one on the axe guy, the axe Praetor, is a little ridiculous, but I kept it.
Yeah, well, I got mine off and put mine a flame burner on it from the Primaris upgrade set, which works perfectly. Actually, from the Salamander character from 40k. But this one on the champion, you've got that half semicircle on the top of the backpack, which is classic 40k look. But what they've kind of done to make it look kind of old and prototypey is it has the actual power cables visible on the back going into the power pack, and then they've painted that section a different color, so you can kind of sort of see where they've like incorporated it into the armor, and I really like that touch. It's kind of really cool.
There's a lot of nice touches on those character models, those plastic HQ models.
Yeah, but obviously this is going to be a resin kit. It's going to be a resin model, just like the...
which I think is a weird move, considering that I thought that they were trying to get away from the resin, but I guess is Forge World now being changed into like only doing the character ranges?
Yes.
And then GW will do the mass production kits?
Pretty much, yeah. Forge World as a entity doesn't really exist anymore. It's been fully absorbed into Games Workshop, because it used to be a company, a separate company, but underneath the corporate umbrella. Now it's literally just a part of Games Workshop. And their
which isn't surprising, considering they were in Games Workshop space. They did a lot of stuff alongside Games Workshop. Yeah. They are Games Workshop.
Yeah, which they weren't, but they
but
are
they
now.
weren't at the time.
Yeah, but they are now. Yeah. So they're fully Games Workshop. Basically, they're like the specialist games department. But when it comes to Heresy, they'll deal with the specific Legion units and things, and then it'll be the sort of HQ. So I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of new consoles coming. I think we're going to see a lot,
considering the Land Speeder Javelin, and I think the whatever it's called, the backwards Sakaran mortar tank thing, were kept in resin, but were adapted for the plastic sponson sprues. I think that's a weird move.
I don't, because I think what we've seen with the tanks and the amount of tanks we've got is what they could physically transfer over to plastic in that time frame.
Okay. So you think it's just a wait until later because a newer kit will appear?
Yeah, I think a few years down the line, once Heresy is firmly embedded, because you've got to remember that second edition has only been around for a year. And in that time, we have had a lot of stuff released. And I think in the next year to 2 years, once the troops, to anybody like still listening, I do not think we're going to get a separate box for breaches. I do not think that's going to happen. I think the breacher set will be an upgrade kit for the tactical marines, and it will literally just have new gun arms and shields.
Interesting call.
I don't think it will. I think it's going to be an upgrade, because that's exactly what they are.
I would predict in that sort of the way you're thinking is that if they do another large box, you may see that there's breachers, but after that box, it'll be either a full kit on its own, or it'll be an upgrade kit.
The fact that they're upgrading the Mark III tactical squad to be updated to sort of work and fit alongside the Mark VI, I'll call this now. Now I haven't been told any rumors or anything like that. This is me just making an educated guess from how I know how they do things. With the Mark III tactical squad being updated in the next couple of months, I will go out on as far as saying that they will be your core kit for the breaches, and the breaches will be an upgrade for that box to make a breacher squad. And I think it'll come out and it'll either have enough parts in that kit to make 10 breaches, or it'll have enough in there to make 20 breaches. And it'll either be a sprue full of shields and a sprue full of arms with the bolt guns and a few different weapon options like the las cutters and stuff like that. Because the reason why I don't think they'll do it as a separate kit entirely is because of the amount of plastic they'll need for those shields. Whereas rather
And
than being able to sell a unit of 20, because of the size of the shields and how much space that will take on a frame,
yeah, because you're talking about
you're
arms, not
yeah
weapons.
yeah you're reducing that down to a 10-man squad. Whereas if they do it just the arms and the shields to work with the Mark III kit, then you can double that up, and you can have 4 frames with enough for 20 Marines. So that's my thinking. Now I could be
Hmm.
completely wrong, but I think that that's probably the best call, and I don't think we're going to see that until probably late next year at the earliest.
Hmm.
They're well and truly 18 months out at the earliest.
I would like to see them launched alongside the Assault Marines.
I don't think we will, because they didn't say a thing about them, but we know the Salt Marines are coming, and also Epic didn't show breaches.
Hmm.
Um, and
I just
breach,
with your comparison, it's just like I envisage that boxes will be released because it'll be Mark 6 Assault Marines and Mark 3 Breachers,
no,
and that's
no.
that's all I can imagine.
Mark three, we've already seen the Mark three. They've shown it already. Um, the
And we
Mark
know that they're coming out with bolters.
yeah, it's a Mark three tactical squad, and I would
Yeah.
imagine that the Mark four tactical squad will be given the same treatment. Um, I have heard rumors that they will do the same for Mark two and Mark five, and then we'll have the Assault Marine kit, which I believe is a 20-man kit or a 15-man kit, 15 or 20. It's
So
one or the other.
they seem to, because they upped their box sizes from 10 to 20
Yeah,
for
yeah,
boxes of Marines,
yeah. They have.
which is something that I was quite surprised about because I was expecting to be able to go out and buy a box of 10 Mark threes
Yeah,
instead.
I kind of like the larger size, because you're getting a lot more, because you've got the weapon upgrade boxes now. You can buy
Yeah,
like a box of 10, 20 Marines, and you can build a 10-man tactical squad out of that, and then pick up
and
some
from
specialist
a
weapons and
price
do it.
point of view, it's you're not terribly
No,
worse off.
it's still
It's
cheaper
still
than what it
good.
was from Forge World.
Yeah, because I think it was, well, I don't even know about the Forge World price.
Oh
Five,
fuck!
five men. Last time that I bought 5 men was 5 Mark 5 Marines,
I'll tell you right now, like I don't
and
even know
they
if they
were.
sell them
I
anymore.
I think 5 of them were 25 quid. I think that might be low in
Um,
the month.
I don't even think so. Basically, if you want to buy 5 Mark III Despoiler Marines right now from Forge World, it will cost you £45. If you want to cost, if you want to buy 5 Mark Breaches, it will cost you £45. In fact, all of the squads are £45, apart from the Mark V Heresy armor, which is 32. But you don't get any bolters with that. You then need to go and buy bolters or source
Yeah.
bolters. But those do work with the Mark IV and the Mark III bolters. So if you have any spare, they work. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons why I do think what I think with the breaches is that the actual resin version were Mark III. Um, they were the Mark III breacher squads. And you only really typically see breaches in Mark III because of that's what it was
Now,
designed for.
at the same time, now while you're on Forge World, Rick,
Okay.
if you go to the 40K section,
Yes.
Marines have a upgrade kit, which give you access to that classic like Mark 4, Mark 7 breacher kit, which don't look
Um,
entirely out of place.
I know there's the upgrade one for the Ultramarines. Get their upgrade kit separately.
Not them. It's a generic Space Marine
Okay, let's have a
breacher
little
stuff.
look. Power weapons, power weapons. Oh, Drodo weapons. Oh, look, they've all been switched over to resin, and it's just the main body that isn't. It's almost like there's a plastic version coming. Do do do. You say that. There's they're not here anymore. Nope, they're not here. Space Marines, Space Marine infantry upgrades. Shoulder pads. Nope, not under the infantry upgrades. What about infantry weapons? We'll get rid of the infantry upgrades. Nope. Oh, wait, there's a second page. Nope, no breacher squads anymore. And like one of the things as well, I definitely think we're going to be seeing with the, and I think they've kind of have touched on it, and I'll have to check. I'm pretty sure that they do touch on that with regards to, yes, there we go. Yes, they did. So in spring next year, it says about getting melee weapons, and I think the fact that right now there are melee upgrade sets from weapon sets for Mark II, Mark III, and Mark IV, I think they'll get discontinued, and they'll bring out a plastic kit for melee weapons for the Assault Marines, because spring next year we've obviously got the Command Squad and melee weapons coming out in plastic, and yeah, the Mark III is 100% just. Although interestingly enough, and I don't know if this is just how they've built them, but you've got in the picture you've got 3 of them with bolt guns, and then in the background you've got 3 of them with Volkite weapons. So unless that must be the upgrade weapons from the plastic upgrade set.
Yeah, probably just showing off what's possible. And
on the early render of the Assault Marine, one of the Assault Marines actually has a combat shield. In the render that they're shown, so I would say that combat shield will not be in the squad, or you might get one. Does the sergeant have access to a combat shield like normal Assault Marines?
I don't think so.
But I think you may get one, maybe 1 per 10 in the box.
Now, Assault Marines can take combat shields.
All of them?
Yep. You
might get enough combat shields for the entire squad. I've heard that it's at least a 15 man box.
I would expect, since the other infantry is in 20, I can only imagine that it will also be 20.
Yeah, but I can also imagine them doing it as a 10, and then if you want a max squad, you're having to go and buy a secondary box. But they don't seem to be doing that too much with
not with their infantry, because I mean they even maxed out how many Terminators you get in a box. It used to be 5 and now it's 10.
Yeah.
So I can't see them going against that and doing something different all of a sudden.
True. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, and I think I've nailed my prediction for the breaches, but it'll be a long time before we get that. But
yeah,
we're now over the 2 hour mark. Yes, but we're now over the 2 hour mark. So we're going to call it there. No, we've done it deliberately. I like 2 hour podcasts. They're good. It's all great. So we will be back next week, and we will be looking at Zone Mortalis. Look at that. We're actually telling you what we're getting the week after. Damn, we're so good. Getting great at this whole podcast thing. And and thank you for everybody who is listening and subscribed and all of that. It's amazing. The channel is growing lovingly, and it's good. We just need to get Kyle an actual webcam. We can actually start having face cams on there for anyone that's actually watches rather than listens. Great. We're definitely off on a tangent now. So, any closing words, Carl?
Just play how you want to play, people, and give Inductii a second look if you've written them off before. I think that depending on the Legion, these could be those.
Not if you're Blood Angels, just
not if you're Blood Angels, but pretty much everybody else, you can probably have a good go. And it's some of these units can just be fun and throw away.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be a powerhouse, right?
Well, we're not 40k players.
No.
No.
They're fun.
We're historical
Give 'em a
players. Give them a go. We'll see you all next week, peeps. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.